The story of modern college football is often told through the lens of stagnation. For years, the conversation surrounding the program at State College followed a predictable, albeit frustrating script. It was a program of consistent excellence that seemed to have hit its glass ceiling. 10 wins was the standard, 11 wins was the peak. But in a landscape where the Big Ten has expanded into an 18-team coastal juggernaut, the standard of yesterday is no longer enough to survive tomorrow. The departure of the previous regime didn't just open a job, it opened a debate about the soul of the program. Did they need a recruiter who could stack talent, or a tactician who could win the chess match on Saturdays? In hiring Matt Campbell, the administration has placed a massive bet on the latter. This isn't just a coaching change, it is a fundamental pivot in how one of the country's most storied programs intends to build its future. Matt Campbell is a name that has been whispered in coaching circles for nearly a decade. He was the man who did the impossible. He made Iowa State relevant. He took a program that was traditionally in the basement of the Big 12 and turned it into a consistent winner through a philosophy he calls the process. But as he steps onto the turf at Beaver Stadium, the process is about to meet a reality it has never faced before. This is a deep dive into the culture shock, the recruiting hurdles, and the strategic evolution of Matt Campbell at Penn State. To understand why Matt Campbell is here, you have to understand what he did in Ames, Iowa. College football is increasingly becoming a game of talent acquisition. The logic is simple. Get the best players, and wins will follow. Campbell took the opposite approach. At Iowa State, he succeeded by becoming the master of talent development. He didn't have the luxury of recruiting five-star athletes. He had to find the three-star scars, the kids with high motors, chips on their shoulders, and the physical frames that could be molded over 4 years. His Iowa State teams were famous for being five-star men. This was a culture tag that he used to describe players who prioritize the collective over the individual. In State College, he inherits a roster that is already elite by every recruiting metric, but there is a hidden danger in that. A developmental coach thrives when players are hungry for validation. When you move to a blue blood program, the players arrive already validated by the recruiting services. The challenge for Campbell in year one is internal. Can you convince a locker room full of consensus All-Americans to play with the desperation of a two-star recruit from rural Ohio? This is the first culture shock. At Iowa State, Campbell was the underdog. He used the us against the world mentality to fuel upsets over Oklahoma and Texas. Now he is the Oklahoma and Texas of his conference. He is one of the Goliaths. Learning how to coach as a favorite while maintaining the edge of an underdog is a philosophical tightrope that very few coaches have successfully walked. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, recruiting. In the modern Big Ten, recruiting is an arms race. If you aren't landing top 10 classes, you aren't winning the conference, period. Under the previous administration, Penn State was a recruiting machine. They had a Maryland to Jersey pipeline that was the envy of the East Coast. They were flashy, they were modern, and they were relentless. Matt Campbell, by contrast, is a Massillon, Ohio guy who believes in the power of the handshake and the multi-year relationship. Their hurdle here is the star rating paradigm. Campbell has built a career on finding diamonds in the rough. But at Penn State, you cannot survive on diamonds in the rough alone. You need the polished gems. You need the kids who have been the best in the country since they were 14 years old. The concern among the faithful is whether Campbell's blue-collar pitch will resonate with the modern elite recruit. When a five-star wide receiver from Miami or Los Angeles is looking at schools, they aren't necessarily looking for grit. They are looking for a path to the NFL and a robust NIL package. Campbell's task is to bridge the gap between his evaluation-first philosophy and the talent-first requirements of Penn State. He has to prove that he can win the big fish battles against coaches like Ryan Day at Ohio State or Dan Lanning at Oregon. If he tries to turn Penn State into Iowa State 2.0 by ignoring the five-star blue-chip recruits, the talent gap between Penn State and the top of the Big Ten will widen until it becomes an abyss. Recruiting isn't just about the pitch anymore. It's about the paycheck. Name, image, and likeness is no longer a side conversation. It is the foundation of the roster. Penn State boasts one of the most organized NIL collectives in the country. They have the alumni base and the corporate backing to compete with almost anyone. However, Matt Campbell's entire coaching identity is built on loyalty and commitment. In the era of the transfer portal and the open market, those concepts are under assault. At Iowa State, Campbell was able to keep his best players from leaving for bigger NIL deals because he had built deep personal bonds with them. But at Penn State, he is entering a transactional environment. He has to learn how to manage a locker room where some players are making seven figures before they ever take a snap. The hurdle is the NIL culture paradox. How do you preach team first when the economy of the game is a me first? Campbell has to modernize his approach. He cannot be an NIL skeptic. He has to become an NIL strategist. He needs to use the resources at Penn State not just to attract talent, but to retain it. If he treats NIL as a distraction rather than a tool, he will find himself losing his best players to the portal every December. The Big Ten Campbell is entering is not the Big Ten he grew up watching in Ohio. It is a sprawling coastal empire that stretches from the Atlantic to the Pacific. This new map presents a logistical and strategic hurdle that is unprecedented in college football. In any given season, Penn State may have to play New Jersey one week and Seattle, Washington the next. The Rust Belt identity that Campbell holds dear is being diluted by the infusion of the West Coast speed and Pacific Northwest weather. Strategically, Campbell has to prepare for two different styles of play. In the traditional Midwest, the Big Ten is still a game of trench warfare, big offensive lines, and powerful running games. But with the addition of USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, the conference now has more of a speed element that mirrors the old Pac-12. Campbell's defensive philosophy has always been stopping the run first. That'll work against Iowa and Wisconsin, but can his scheme hold up against air raid concepts of Lincoln Riley and Ryan Day? He has to evolve his defensive secondary to handle the most elite passing attacks in the country, while still maintaining the toughness to survive a snowy Saturday in November in Ann Arbor. Perhaps the most critical hurdle for Campbell is the geographical battle for the I-80 corridor. For the last decade, Penn State has watched as the best talent in Pennsylvania and Ohio have been siphoned off. Ohio State has owned the Buckeyes' home state, and Michigan has raided the Philadelphia area with alarming success. Campbell's hiring is a direct shot at reclaiming this territory. Because he is a Massillon native, he speaks the language of high school coaches in these regions. His first mission is to close the borders. He needs to make Penn State the default choice for every elite player within a 6-hour drive of State College. If he can secure the local Tier 1 talent, he doesn't need to fly to California or Florida to fill out his roster. He can build a championship caliber team using the Rust Belt as his engine, but this requires him to win head-to-head battles against some of the best recruiters in the game. He isn't just selling a program. He's selling a vision of a home team that can actually win a national title. Finally, we have to look at the game itself. The primary criticism of the previous regime at Penn State was in-game management. They were elite at everything except the 4 hours on Saturday afternoon. Clock management and fourth down decision-making were often cited as the reasons Penn State couldn't get over the hump. Matt Campbell is widely considered one of the best game day coaches in the country. He is a tactician. He understands flow, momentum, and the nuances of the middle 8 minutes of the game. However, being a head coach at Penn State is less like being a coach and more like being a CEO. You have thousands of employees, a massive donor base, and a media spotlight that never turns off. At Iowa State, Campbell could disappear into the film room. At Penn State, he is going to be the face of a multi-billion-dollar brand. The hurdle is time. If he spends his time being a CEO, will his tactician edge be dulled? Or conversely, if he stays in the film room, will the program's brand suffer? This is the CEO Tactician Balance. He has to hire an elite staff that he can trust to handle the details, allowing him to be the leader the program needs while still being the closer on Saturday afternoons. The Matt Campbell era at Penn State is a fascinating experiment in scaling excellence. We have seen coaches like Campbell succeed at the developmental level, only to be crushed by the weight of expectations at a blue blood. But Campbell feels differently. He doesn't feel like a coach who is just happy to be here. He feels like a coach who has been preparing for this specific stage of his entire career. He knows the hurdles. He knows that his blue collar culture will be tested by NIL money and 5-star egos. He knows that fans in Happy Valley will give him exactly one season of patience before the demands for a playoff run begin. The pivot from Iowa State to Penn State is the ultimate test of the process. If it works, Matt Campbell won't just be the man who broke the 11-win ceiling. He'll be the man who redefined what it means to be a powerhouse in the new Big Ten. The eyes of the conference are on State College. The Ames process is dead. The Happy Valley pivot has begun. And for Matt Campbell, the time for doing more with less is over. Now the only thing that matters is doing everything with everything. Thank you for watching Saturday in Happy Valley.